the quote that inspired this practice today of opposites, and it comes from the Taoist teachings from Zhuang Jin, and it's called "Every that is also a this. Every this is also a that. A thing may not be perceived as that, but it could be understood as this. This and that mutually generate each other. Where there is birth, there is death, and vice versa. Affirmation leads to denial, and denial leads to affirmation. Rights lead to wrong, and wrongs lead to right. So everything is also this, and everything is also that. And I think that was kind of where I wanted to point our attention towards, remind us that we have to learn how to hold our this and that, right? Thank you all for being here as always. It doesn't work if you don't, and I'm really glad that you do. It's a good community that we have here to practice and to kind of take this time for ourselves. And so, close the eyes if you haven't done so already. Start to bring your attention inwards. Get a sense for where you are in the body today. That initial start of practice can sometimes be a little rocky because you're coming out of activity for most of us. We've had a day that we've already pretty much completed, and so we have this almost residual energy that carries over from that. And with the eyes closed and the attention focused, you can start to feel what some of that feels like. Whether that's tension in the jaw and the face, somewhere else in the body, you might be feeling discomfort. You might have a really scattered mind right now that is kind of all over the place, and you'd like to begin to rein it in. But this is the start of practice, the witnessing and watching what's happening. Not so much the control or the forcing or the kind of maneuvering, but rather setting the condition for you to kind of observe observe the nature of things. Throughout the practice today, I'll give you periods of silence to sit with and explore whatever part of the practice that I'm directing your attention towards. So you're going to spend some time with yourself. I'm going to ask you to do that in a very kind, considerate, and compassionate way. And if you haven't done so, begin to notice the way you're receiving your breath today. And I say receiving specifically because you don't have to do anything to get your breath. Your breath shows up as it is right now in this moment. I'm asking you just to pay attention to it. There's a space, there's a rhythm and a pace, I should say, to the way your breath is moving in and out, rising and falling, expanding, contracting, giving and receiving. if and when the mind decides to wander, wander off into the body or get lost in a stream of thinking. Kind of notice the thought, acknowledge it, and then let your attention softly return to following the breath. Oftentimes, when we hold our focus in one place, there's a bit of rebelliousness, kind of swirls things up in us. That's when the body wants to present all of the agitation. The mind wants to distract you. And I bring that up because it's to be expected. And I would say that for the kind of recursive thinking that might occur in these situations, it is okay to let your attention rest on those things, to follow them with the same curiosity I'm asking you to investigate your breath. Because you might notice that as you're watching your breath, it changes, it moves, it adjusts. And the thing about your practice is your practice isn't just a practice of receiving the breath the way you've been doing it for the last couple minutes, but you can also give to the practice, put into the practice bits and pieces. So for the breath, take a couple rounds of what we call coherent breathing or balanced breathing. And really, that's a big fancy word for saying match your inhale breath to your exhale breath in a rhythmic way. Often we start with a 4 count inhale and a 4 count exhale, and that's what I will demo for practice today. But you can choose a number that you feel works better for you. And so begin to inhale for 4, for 3, for 2, for 1. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Just allowing the breath to be continuous. Breathing in for 3, for 2, for 1. And then breathing out for 3, for 2, for 1. Counting helps to give the mind something to work with as you continue to follow the breath to that 4 count or otherwise different rhythm that feels natural to you. And as you move through this kind of counting of the breath and feeling this pace of the breath, start to notice with your attention as if you're opening your aperture a little bit wider to see how this has landed in your body, how you feel in this moment from watching and observing the breath in this way. We're in the time of year where things are starting to blossom and bloom in a lot of areas as spring begins to come online. I really enjoyed listening to all the birds chirping in my neighborhood. And it is nice because it reminds us that there's a fresh start to things. But also, that same concept has another end of its spectrum, which is sometimes fresh starts they happen not because we chose them, but because life chose them for us. Those don't often feel so great. And it is our journey here in our practice to learn how to move between both sides of those spectrums because we are built to kind of handle those opposites in the same way you've been working with the opposites of your breathing so far. You have an inhale, thus you have an exhale. And so I'm going to ask you to begin to bring your attention to your kind of thought process and begin to recall a recent time or memory of any size or scale that's of a positive nature. That's something that's kind of went well or really um, was good for you, felt really good to you. And it's letting this positive memory kind of take over this moment. And it's good to observe if your focus on this memory is really all in the head. And if it is, can you take it down into the body and expand it? Notice in your body where you can feel the location of this memory, its size, its shape, texture, or color. How does this positive moment resonate beyond just your mind into the place of feeling it deeply? Eventually, you can release the thought and just let your attention rest in the physical location that represents this positive memory. And without releasing complete hold of where you feel that positive nature, that positive memory in your body, we will begin to now welcome in its opposite, to welcome in a recent memory that is a little less than positive, negative, even something that doesn't feel good. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing that you choose here, but just something that will also begin to show up and resonate in your body in a way. And I ask you to give with compassion and care the same level of attention that you put towards the memory that was positive to this memory as well. Letting your breath be a partner to you in this process. Letting the memory drop back and find that place where the less than positive memory exists within your body. And you can even take a little time here to play, moving your attention between where the positivity resided in the body and where the negativity or the less than positive memory resides in the body. And just imagine that your attention is shifting from one to the other and noticing what that shift change or what that shift and change does and how it feels to you. The resistance you might even meet along the way. And then take both of those sensations, those feelings in your body, and attempt to hold them at the exact same time, almost as if you put them right next to each other and sat and mediated holding both of those. When we hold our opposites in this way, we're reminded that our happiness and our heartbreak oftentimes sit right next to each other. And it's us looking at how we hold them that determines what grows and what diminishes, because that's what your attention is doing, even in this moment. And as you sit with this experience, I would ask you to consider, what do you need in this moment? Can you give yourself compassion if you need it in this moment, or grace, or forgiveness? You can begin to let your attention soften a little bit from the focus of your opposites, and almost as if you zoom out really wide, right? Because often our attention likes to sit up in our head, right behind our eyes. So, can you make that wider as if you're taking in your peripheral vision with your eyes closed so that you have a little more space? And as if you're just stepping back or dropping back, your focus now goes as broad as you're moving your visual field. So now it's not just the thoughts, but it's also the breath, it's the rest of your body, it's the sounds around you. It is the ebb and flow of life, the rhythm of it happening around you. And it's in this space where we rest and can witness everything happening that we're reminded that the space is large enough for us to have these opposites, to have this continuum of change. But when we draw our attention down and lock it on things needing to be a certain way in order for us to be okay, we reduce this space. We limit our options. Again, to guide the tension back to its starting place, back to your breath. Back to that original design of this play of opposites that we go through. As you follow the breath moving in and moving out, noticing if there's anything else here that still needs care or your attention. One of the greatest gifts that you could ever give anything is your attention. That's enough. In the last minute of practice, offer yourself the gift of a bit of kindness for showing up to do the work today, for sitting with the whole part of yourself in this moment. As we begin to close out practice, remember that the merits of your work here not only serve you, but they reverberate and expand out beyond you to those around you. Take your time in transitioning out of practice to let the eyes come open, to let the hands move slightly, to begin to kind of take in more fully more information from the external world.
Like and subscribe.